Chapter 6. Amanda smoothed her skirt and applied a layer of lip gloss in front of the mirror. Tonight would be her first real date out with Caleb, and her stomach had been in knots all day. "So, you going to get some tonight?" Jade smirked from her bed. Biting back the first reply that popped in her mind, Amanda took a deep, calming breath and faced her. "You know I'm not. I've already told you that, and you don't have to be intimate with everyone you meet." Jade wrinkled her brow and tilted her head. "Who said I am?" As Amanda sat on her bed, she prayed for wisdom. She wanted to reach Jade, but she knew she needed just the right words. "You did when you had your tryst here the other day. It was only the second week. There's no way you knew that guy very well." "You don't know what I feel for him," Jade said, bristling. "Well, it's not from lack of trying," Amanda replied. "I've been trying to get to know you." Amanda bit her lip as she tried to soften her next statement. "Look, all I'm saying is that whatever you're looking for, a man probably can't supply. But Jesus, he can heal any pain you're feeling." Jade snorted and rolled her eyes. "Yeah, Jesus has never been there for me. I've always had to look out for myself." "Have you ever asked him?" Jade opened her mouth to reply, but then shut it again. A knock sounded at the door, and both girls looked that direction. Amanda's heart sank a bit. She had thought there had been a moment when Jade was going to let her in. "That will be Caleb, but I hope we can talk again soon." Jade gave no answer, and Amanda sighed softly as she pushed herself off the bed and crossed to the door. Caleb stood on the other side of the door, looking dapper in a blue shirt that perfectly matched his eyes. Amanda's heartbeat sped up as her eyes were drawn to the shirt stretched across his muscular chest. She turned back to Jade to avoid blushing. "Caleb, this is my roommate Jade. Jade, Caleb." Jade harumphed a half-hearted reply, and Caleb raised his brows. Amanda rolled her eyes and shook her head slightly to indicate she'd explain later. "She seems pleasant," Caleb said, as Amanda pulled the door shut behind them. "I think she is underneath. It seems like there's some hurt in her past." Caleb nodded and grabbed Amanda's hand. She smiled up at him as a tingle ran up her arm. For the moment, Jade was forgotten. Amanda's jaw dropped as Caleb pulled into the parking lot of the theater. The building was painted a bright purple with a marquee advertising the shows in bright lights. "Wow, it's so hideous?" he asked with a laugh. "I know. They painted it last year, and I have no idea why they chose purple." Amanda shook her head as she climbed out of the truck and walked around to meet Caleb, who grabbed her hand and led the way to the ticket agent. "Due for child's play," he said, pulling out his wallet with his free hand. The color drained from Amanda's face, and her throat constricted. "Is that a horror movie?" she asked softly. Amanda had sworn off scary movies at the age of 12 after a scary slumber party. They'd been watching some crazy show about a possessed doll that grew until it was big enough to kill everyone in the house. Though she had known it wasn't real, she couldn't shake the fear as she climbed into her sleeping bag. Her active imagination had run wild, and long after everyone else was asleep, her eyes were still wide open. The house had grown eerily quiet, unusual with 20 girls filling the living room. Then a noise that she could only describe as the sound of something growing began radiating from a cabinet. Her eyes had stayed glued to that cabinet until morning. Amanda shivered as the memory of the weird sound and the terror that had coursed through her body filled her mind again. The fear had carried over into her own house for another week. Some nights, she'd even had to watch a silly cartoon before falling asleep, so the image of the terrifying doll wasn't the last thing in her mind.
Yeah, I heard it's great. Don't you like scary movies?
He raised his eyebrow in insinuation. Amanda felt like he wanted her to say yes, but she wasn't sure she could. Did she tell him the truth or hope her fear had been tamed with age? Actually, I don't. Caleb let out a deep breath.
Okay,
He said slowly and turned back to the movie board listing.
Well, the only other thing playing close to now is a cartoon.
I don't mind cartoons. Amanda squeezed his hand, hoping he would understand. The movie attendant, probably a high school student by his baby face, shook his head but exchanged the tickets. Caleb appeared to hold no ill will and held the door open for Amanda. After buying popcorn and drinks, they made their way down the purple carpeted hallway to the theater. Where did one even find purple carpet? The lights inside the theater were already dimmed, but as Amanda scanned the room, she could see they were the only people in the theater.
Well, I guess there's an upside to cartoons late at night after all.
Caleb grinned and headed to the very top of the theater. Warnings fired again in Amanda's head. Though she'd never done it, she had heard many stories of couples making out in the top row of the theaters where the movie attendant couldn't see them. In fact, she was almost sure that's how one of the many girls who had gotten pregnant at her high school had found herself in that unfortunate situation. But Amanda pushed the warnings aside as she climbed the stairs after him. Caleb didn't seem the type to force himself on her. He hadn't pushed her to be intimate, and after all, he had agreed to see a cartoon for her. He sat down in one of the middle chairs, and Amanda took the plush seat to his left. Even the velvet on the chairs was purple. She wondered who the decorator had been and if the manager who had approved the color scheme had been colorblind. The lights dimmed and the previews started. Though not a romantic movie, Amanda felt her face flush every time her fingers touched Caleb's in the popcorn bowl. When the popcorn was gone, Caleb held her hand, and though he traced slow circles on it that caused her heartbeat to amplify in her ears, he never made a move to go further.
You ready?
He asked as the movie ended. Can we stay till all the credits run? Amanda asked.
I guess,
Caleb said, wrinkling his brow.
But why? The movie's over.
I did a play once in high school. The actors got all the credit. But no one mentioned our light, sound, and tech crew who did all the backstage work. Without them, our play would have been a disaster. Ever since, I've wanted to stay through the credits as a thank you to the behind-the-scenes people. I know it's silly, Amanda said, as the expression on his face changed from curiosity to disbelief. The corner of his lip pulled up into a smile.
No, I think it's sweet. I've just never known anyone quite like you.
When the last credit rolled and the lights came back up, Amanda rose and followed Caleb out of the theater. As Caleb pushed open the door to the outside, Amanda shivered. Though still summer, the night air held a slight chill that bit through her short-sleeved shirt. Not missing a beat, Caleb placed his arm around her shoulder and pulled her to his side. The masculine scent of his cologne wafted to her nose, and a spark of desire flared within her. Amanda wrapped her arm about his waist and smiled up at him. As she climbed into his car, Amanda couldn't decide if she wanted to be closer to him or farther away so as not to inflame the desire. So, are we still on for church on Sunday? She asked. Perhaps if she reminded herself that the Holy Spirit was watching, her racing heart would calm down.
What? Oh, yeah, church. Sure. He turned his head away. Did you want to try the Experience Life place?
That sounds fine. Do you know what time the service starts?
No, can you check?
Amanda pulled out her cell phone and tapped the Safari app to open the search engine, but her email popped up instead. At the top of the inbox list was an email from the Students for Life. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be from Jared? She hadn't thought of him all evening, but his face filled her mind now. Sneaking a glance at Caleb, she surreptitiously tapped it to read, and disappointment, mingled with relief, flooded her body. It wasn't from Jared, but it was a reminder of the information fair happening on Monday, which she was sure he would be attending. Promising herself she would read it more thoroughly later, she clicked out of it and to the web browser to search for the church time. "Looks like 10:45, she said.
Sounds good, Caleb replied. I'll pick you up at 10:15 then.
He pulled into the dorm parking lot and turned off the engine. He turned to Amanda and grabbed her hands.
I had a really nice time. Thanks for coming with me.
Amanda's breath caught in her throat at the intensity of his gaze, and her voice came out barely louder than a whisper. Me too. All thoughts of Jared flew out of her mind as her heart pounded in her chest. Could he hear that? Caleb placed a hand on the back of her neck and pulled her face toward his. Fireworks exploded in Amanda's head, and a tingling ran down her entire spine as his lips touched hers. This was so much better than her first kiss had been. This was what a first kiss should be like.
I'll see you Sunday, he whispered as he pulled back.
Amanda could only nod. If you're that attracted to her, why don't you ask her out? Emily asked as she filled her mug with tea and returned to the table.
Jared sighed. I don't know. I guess my nerves got the better of me. What if she turns out to be another Nikki?
What if she doesn't? Becca spoke up. Jared, we know you were hurt by what Nikki did, but you can't close yourself off to new possibilities. Jared ran a hand through his hair.
I know you guys are right, but it's hard to open yourself up again. Open yourself up to what?
Chase asked, entering the lounge with his Bible under his arm. Love, Becca teased. Jared's crushing on the new girl.
The redhead? Chase asked. Good choice. She seemed nice and down to earth.
You barely talked to her, Sarah said, looking up from her Bible. How can you be so sure?
I'm a good judge of character, Chase smiled. It's how I knew you had a soft side under that sharp, hawkish exterior you like to put on.
All right, you two lovebirds, Emily said, teasing the couple. We should get started if we want to finish in time to get a good rest before tomorrow. The others grumbled good-naturedly but nodded. Though she was the youngest, Emily had organized the weekly Bible study last year, and the rest had eagerly agreed. College was full of stressors and temptations, and the weekly meetings had helped them all stay on track and accountable to each other. I thought we'd start with some prayer requests, Emily continued. I could really use some prayers for my new roommate. Emily paused and took a breath. Tough, to say the least. I could use prayer for my chemistry test next week, Becca said. Science is not my strength. As the others continued to share their requests, Jared's mind wandered to Amanda. He could have invited her here. Then it wouldn't have been so much like a date as inviting her into their friendship circle. And she had said she could use more friends. Yes, that's what he would do. The next time he saw her, he would invite her to Bible study. And maybe church. Earth to Jared. Emily's voice broke through Jared's daydream, and he dropped his eyes.
Sorry, he mumbled. I guess prayers for wisdom.
And courage, Emily added. Write that down, Becca. We gotta pray for this man to have the courage to ask Amanda out.
I could use it,
Jared said with a smile. He was so glad God had brought these people into his life last year. It had certainly made dealing with Nikki's rejection and disappearance easier, and now he had a great group of friends to rely on.